Section 15 of the Golden Porch. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Agnes Robert Bear. The Golden Porch by W.M.L. Hutchinson. The Pansy Baby. Chapter 2. King Ipotos died, at last in a green old age, having lived to see the pansy child grow up a tall and comely youth, and he left him heir to all that was his. But the folk of Arcadia were ill pleased that a stranger born should rule over them, and they murmured, saying, "Are there not kinsmen of our dead king in the land, to take his inheritance? Would that one of them were lord over us. For as for this Iamos, we know neither his father nor his kindred." And the old men said, "There is not under the sun so ancient a land as Arcadia, but now the glory is departed from it, for a kinless waif sits in the seat of 100 kings." These sayings came to the ears of Iamos, and he was troubled, not knowing what they meant. "Mother," he said to Evadne, "what is this the people say? That I am no rightful heir of Ipotos? Are not you his daughter, and am not I your child? Yet they call me a stranger and an upstart." Then Evadne told him all the story of his birth, and how he had no mortal father, but was the gift of that bright-haired god who loved her long ago. "I know," she said, "that Apollo will love you also for my sake, and he promised that his favor should always rest on me and mine. So now, if you are troubled at the murmuring of the folk, entreat him to befriend you, and show you a way to deal with them." "Must I seek the god in his house at Delphi?" asked Iamos. "Nay," said Evadne, "there is no need to journey so far. Go this night into the woods, and it may be he will speak to you there, if you call upon him." Iamos went forth at midnight into the dark heart of the forest, and came by winding mossy ways to a leafy hollow, where a streamlet tinkled, unseen in the gloom. A faint sweet scent that he knew rose from the ground. He could not see what flowers were at his feet, but he felt sure they were pansies, and when he stopped and gathered one, it was indeed his namesake, the heart's ease. "Here," he thought, "where Apollo's token blooms, I will call upon his name." He slid down the flowery bank, and stood barefoot in the running brook, for all streams were holy, and men were wont to enter their pure water, when they would implore the presence of the stainless gods. Then, having bathed his hands and forehead, he stretched his arms skyward, saying, "God of the silver bow, glorious Apollo, draw near and hearken to my prayer. I knew not till this day that King Ipotos was not my grandsire, but now it were hateful to me to dwell in Arcadia, bearing the reproaches of the folk, who would fain have a king of the ancient royal blood. Lead me, I pray, to another land and another people, and give me rule over them, that so I may found a kingdom, and make myself a name among men." When he had thus spoken, a voice called far off in the darkness, "Iamos, my son." "Who calls me?" said the lad, trembling, and the voice answered, near at hand, "One who will be to you a father, and perform the promise he made to Evadne in the days of her youth. Follow me now, in the way that I am going, till we come to the fair place that shall be your home." Iamos felt that a presence stood close beside him in the dark hollow, but he could discern no form or feature through the gloom. "Gracious Apollo," he said, "lead me where you will, yet how shall I tread in the footsteps of a guide I cannot see?" But now the voice came from farther down the stream, calling, "Hither to me," and he hastened after it, and ever as he sped onward through the murk of the woods, he heard it crying before him, "Follow, follow." No other sound broke the deep hush of the night, save the rippling of the stream, now nearer and now more distant, as they took their way along the narrow vales through which it flowed. It seemed to Iamos that his limbs were becoming strangely light, and his feet went swifter than ever before. Tirelessly he raced on, and never tripped or stumbled, though he could not see a spear's length before him under the star-proof forest boughs. At last, in the first grayness of dawn, he found himself in an open valley, where the stream, now broadened to a river, ran between wide and level meads. The voice he had followed was silent, and he cried aloud, "Whither now, Apollo?" "Look yonder," said the voice beside him, "where the valley widens into a plain under that low wooded hill. There, hard by the ford of the river, stands a temple of my brother Poseidon, and near it is the tomb of a king. That is the place where you must make your dwelling, and though it be solitary now, it shall be thronged in days to come by the great ones of the earth." Now Iamos had hoped that Apollo would bring him to some fair city, and he marveled in his heart what kingship could be his in that lonely valley. Also he desired exceedingly to behold him face to face, and he said, "O heavenly guide, if this be my journey's end, deign to show yourself to your servant before your departure, for the darkness of the night is gone." But looking eagerly round, he still saw no one, and the invisible god answered, "My son, of two things you shall now choose one, for to have them both is not granted to any mortal. Either you shall see me this once face to face, or you shall hear me speaking to you henceforth, whenever you will, as you hear me now, and talk with me as a man talks with his friend." Then Iamos, when he had thought a little while, said, "I choose to hear your voice, so shall I always find counsel for every need." "You have chosen well," said Apollo. "Henceforth great shall be your fame in this land, for by communing with me, who know all things in heaven and earth, and all that is to come, you will become the wisest of seers. Moreover, your wisdom shall pass to your children, called after your name, and they shall have the gift of soothsay for all time, though it will not be granted to them to hear my voice, lest, being mortals, they boast of possessing the wisdom of the gods. Go now and dwell yonder by the river, until you see one coming to the ford, girt with a lion's skin and bearing a bow. That comer will build an altar to a mightier god than Poseidon, and a new gift will be given to you in that day, whereby you and yours may reveal truth to men." So Iamos went and lodged in Poseidon's temple, and took service there, hewing wood and drawing water for the sacrifices, and the folk of the country gave him food from the offerings they brought to the god. But he did not long hold that lowly office, before Apollo's word began to be fulfilled, for it was soon noised abroad that the stranger youth, who served so diligently in the temple, had marvelous skill in the art of a seer, and his true answers to all who inquired of him about things to come were talked of far and near. At last the king of the land himself came to visit him, and bade him interpret a dream that he had dreamed. Iamos gave him no answer till he had spoken secretly with Apollo. Then he declared the meaning of the dream, and what he foretold from it came straightway to pass. After this the king would have had him dwell in his palace in the city, but since Iamos would not leave the place appointed by the god, he built him a goodly house there. The young seer would take no rewards from poor folk when they came to him for prophecies, but from the great of the land he took such gifts as they pleased to bestow, so that his wealth increased with his fame. Now this king, whose name was Algaios, was very rich in flocks and herds, and he kept 1,000 oxen stalled in a great byre near his house. The byre was never cleansed from year's end to year's end, and at length the oxen stood so deep in filth that it bred a murrain among them. Then Algaios set his herdsmen to cleanse the stalls, but none of them had strength to endure that noisome labor, and he took counsel of Iamos what were best to be done, who bade him send heralds abroad to offer a rich recompense to whoever would clear the byre of its foulness. The king did so, and not many days after, Iamos saw a man coming to the ford of the river, girt with a lion's skin and bearing a great bow. "This is the comer," he thought, and he went to meet the stranger, and asked him his name. "I am called Heracles," said he with the bow, "and I seek King Aegeus, for I hear word of a service he needs. If he will pay the price I ask, I will cleanse his bier for him, and that in one day." "I will bring you to him," said Iamos, and they went together to the house of the king. Aegeus believed it impossible for one man to do that work, even in a year, so he readily promised the stranger the price he asked, which was 100 of oxen. Then Heracles asked for a mattock and a spade, and they were given to him, amid laughter and jibbing from the king and his men, who deemed him crazed in his wits. And when Heracles began to dig a wide trench at the door of the byre, they laughed the more. But he, with more than mortal strength, dug that trench right across the fields that lay between the city and the river, and when he came to the ford he built a dam of earth and stones athwart the stream, so that it was turned from its course and flowed into the trench, and the waters rushing through their new channel flooded the byre and washed away the dung heaps that filled the stalls, and poured in a torrent down to the pool beneath the city walls. From morning to evening Heracles wrought at that task without rest, and before sunset the byre was cleansed. Then, lest the water should swamp the city, he went in haste to break down the dam at the ford, and they returned again to the riverbed. But when he claimed his reward of the 100 oxen, an evil thought came to Aegeus, and he said, "What mean you, stranger? I take the gods to witness that I made no such promise. Shall I give 100 oxen for the hire of one day's labor? That wage you shall never have of me, unless you can prove that I promised it." This he said cunningly, for it had so chanced that Iamos did not go with Heracles into the king's presence, and none of his household was with Aegeus when he gave the promise, except Peleus, his young son. So the false king, who thought his son was even such as himself, now called for Iamos and said, "Let the seer judge between us, for he is just and holy." And Iamos said, "Is there not a witness who can say which of the two speaks truly, King Aegeus or the stranger?" "Here is Phyleus, my son," answered the king, "who was present at our talk together, and can bear witness that I did not promise the 100 oxen." But the young prince blushed red with shame for his father's guile, and said, "Nay, my father, you did promise them, for I heard you." At that Aegeus was wroth, and for all Iamos could say against it, he banished his son out of the land on pain of death, and commanded his servants to drive both him and Heracles forth from the palace. Heracles could have overcome them all, single-handed, yet for the sake of Phyleus, and lest harm should come to him, he departed without another word, taking the lad with him. But Iamos shook off the dust from his sandals on the king's threshold and said, "Woe to this house, and woe to Aegeus, because of the thing he has done this day. I say to you, O perjured king, that I will see your face no more, for the God whom I serve abhors lying and deceit." Aegeus had a mind to slay him for these words, but he feared to lay hands on him, because he was a prophet, and beloved of all the folk, and he let him go back to his own place. Not long after this word came to the king, that an army was marching upon his borders, and the captain of the host was the man clad in the lion skin, who had cleansed his bier. For Heracles had mustered his friends and comrades out of many cities to make war on Aegeus, and he had with him all the fighting men of Arcadia, the birthplace of Iamos, who were his sworn allies, because of a service he had done them of old. There was a lake in Arcadia, which was the home of a strange tribe of great waterfowl, and they preyed on human flesh, and were the terror of the land until Heracles scared them away forever with the twanging of his mighty bowstring and the hissing flight of his arrows. This good deed the men of Arcadia kept in remembrance, and now they repaid it, as they had vowed to do. But the son of Aegeus was not with that host, for Heracles had helped the lad to win himself a kingdom in the north country, where he lived prosperously all his days. And King Augeas and his folk gave battle to the invaders before the gates of the city, and were put to utter rout, and the city was taken and set on fire. Now Heracles had given command to his host that they should give quarter to all, except the king only. Therefore there was little slaughter that day, but Augeas himself met the doom he well deserved. All his wealth and all the spoil of the city Heracles divided with his comrades, and next day they set forth with their booty heaped on ox wagons, and with vast droves of cattle, to return to their homes. When they came to the ford of the river, Iamos met them, and Heracles asked him what temple that was, and why it was built there, apart from any dwelling of men. "It is Poseidon's temple," said Iamos, "which a prince who once ruled this land built in thanksgiving for a victory he won here by that god's help. Pelops was his name, and he came overseas from the east, where his father was a king of surpassing wealth and glory, whom men called the favorite of the gods." Then he told Heracles the story of the chariot race, which has been told in this book already, and showed him the tomb of Pelops, who had bidden his sons bury him beside Poseidon's shrine. "I also then," said Heracles, "will build a temple here to the god who has given me victory this day, even to Most High Zeus, my guardian and deliverer in all perils. And as Pelops ordained chariot races to be run here for a perpetual memorial, I too will now hold a contest of young men in feats of speed and strength, and leave it in your charge, holy seer, to hold the like once in 4 years, keeping solemn festival to the honor of Zeus." Thereupon he chose out rich prizes for the games from his share of the spoil, and gave the remainder to Iamos, saying, "All this I dedicate to Zeus. Take it to your keeping, for I make you treasurer of his temple." So the hero and his comrades marked out a goodly space of the riverside meadow, and fenced it round with an earthen wall, and when they had built an altar of broad stones therein, they burnt sacrifices to Zeus. Then they held the contest, and made Iamos the judge of them. First there was a foot race, next wrestling and boxing, and throwing the stone quoit, and last a chariot race, in honor of Pelops. Heracles himself took no part in the games, because he was the giver of the prizes, and so it was best, for though he was of small stature, his strength was as the strength of 50 men. At evening time great fires were lighted by the stream, and sheep and oxen were roasted whole for the banquet. And all the host sat down to feast and to make merry. The lovely moon looked down in full orb splendor on their festival, and threw her golden light over plain and river. All that midsummer night the warriors held revel, with wine and song and minstrelsy, till the wood fires burned low, and the twittering of birds began to tell that dawn was near. Next noontide Heracles marshaled the host for their journey, and bade Iamos offer sacrifice on the new altar, praying Zeus to give some good omen at their setting forth. Then it was that the second gift of prophecy came to the young seer, as Apollo promised, for looking on the fire of the altar, his mind was suddenly enlightened with strange knowledge, and he read plain signs of fate in the leaping flames. "Go in peace, Heracles," he cried. "Safe and speedy shall be your home faring, as Zeus grants me to discern from the clear burning of the sacrifice. Henceforth I know by Apollo's word to me that I shall thus foretell good or ill hap to all who make offerings on this altar." So Heracles went his way with all his company, and Iamos saw him no more until another day. But the seer fulfilled all the charge he had laid upon him, and dwelt happy and greatly honored in that holy place, serving the gods faithfully all his days. The gift of divining by fire remained ever after with him and his, according to Apollo's promise, and in the after ages, when the sacred games that Heracles founded were become famous over the whole world, the prophets of the glorious sanctuary were the clan who had their name and lineage from the Pansy child. End of section 15.